Appreciate it. So I'm gonna turn it over to Chanel and welcome Ms. Chanel Bowman.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year to all of you. I'm so glad to be with you to share the updates that I know of as of today. Again, please know that information is continuing to flow from our Chief Executive Officer and will continue also from our County Executive as it relates to the reopening plans. But I do have some information that I do want to share with you this evening that you may not be aware of. And then we do have an opportunity for me to address any questions based on the updates that I'm going to share. So the first update, I just wanted everyone to know, just in terms of our Board of Education, we do actually have a new board chair. Dr. Juanita Miller is our new Board of Education chair, and Ms. Sonia Williams is our new vice chair. So I wanted everyone to be aware of that change that did occur with our Board of Education members. The next update I wanted to share is just our vaccine distribution update. And you probably have been paying very close attention to the news as well as the governor's update. But I wanted everyone to know that for Prince George's County, they have entered into phase 1B for COVID-19 vaccinations. And that includes school-based staff, so teachers, as well as our support staff, as well as central office team members are included in the phase 1B. Prince George's County Public Schools is working in collaboration with Kaiser Permanente to facilitate our vaccine program for all employees. I did get a chance to touch base with Ms. Karen Bates yesterday, who is our supervisor for health services in our district. And she is definitely working day and night to be able to kick off and work with the county to kick off vaccinations being available to employees. So we do anticipate a start date for Monday, February the 1st, and there will be 3 different sites located throughout the district. So we'll have a northern location, a southern location, and a central location, and more information will be forthcoming. We anticipate updates will be provided to employees by the end of this week. You might have also heard that if you do fall into any of those vaccination categories, for Prince George's County in particular, there is proof of residency that will be required if you are, a county resident and fall into, the 1A, 1B, and then upcoming 1C category. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. But that's our update around employees and vaccinations in our particular district. The next thing that our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Monica Gosen, as well as our health department thought it was very important to share is the COVID-19 vaccine facts and myths. So I'm just going to ask Marcy if you could the Mythbuster versus fact. I just wanted to kind of share this particular site, which is very informative. The way that it's organized is organized around different topics that it actually has a video clip that goes along with the facts and myths. So if you actually go out here on the site, you'll be able to see, for example, one myth is you can get COVID-19 from the vaccine. The fact is not true. It gives a statement, and then it gives you actually a video clip that accompanies that particular myth and the fact. And then if Marcia just do a quick scroll, you'll see that there's other myths as part of this, as well as video clips. So I definitely, encourage you as family members, as educators or community stakeholders, just to take a look at that, because as you know, we really are trying to make sure that we push vaccinations to keep everyone safe. So I wanted to definitely share that with you around that fact versus myth, which I think is very helpful. The next slide I wanted to share with you is considerations for in-person instruction. So in November, Dr. Gosen did convene a committee, a health committee, to really look at coming up with our metrics around different factors to consider in-person instruction. This information, I believe, was released right before Thanksgiving, and it does sit publicly on our website. So we did provide you the direct link to the website. And there's 3 areas that they're looking at for factors that will impact consideration of in-person instruction. One is the percentage of positive cases when it falls between 5 and 8%. The other factor is the number of new cases per day. And then the third factor is the average daily case rate per 100 population that falls between 5 and 10. Keep in mind that these are not the sole determining factors in terms of reopening schools. But I wanted Marcy just to, if she clicks on that particular link here, and the next slide just gives you the document that we're going to review. And I always encourage, as I've talked to parents, that each week our county will put the metrics on our website. So this week you can see that for Prince George's County, on the first column has the risk level, so high, moderate, or low. The next column gives you the percentage of positive tests. The third column is the number of new cases per day. The third column is a daily new case rate. And then you'll notice that for this particular week, again, this is usually publicized on the website by Monday, you see that our positivity rate is at 9.4%. New cases per day is at 409%. And then our daily case rate is 45. The other thing I wanted to draw to your attention is the grade band. And you could see how the metrics may shift in terms of where decision making. Again, I want to let you know that each week this is being updated. So you will notice that because of where our rate is in those three categories that were high, that there's no in-person instruction, that we're in a virtual only situation. But if you notice, as our metrics moves up in the moderate column, you'll notice that we have pre-K, grades K through 5, that can be considered for limited in-person. Then you'll notice that grades 6 through 8 and grades 9 through 12 would be considered for virtual. I also want you to know that for students that are in special education programs in our district, they would actually follow, and you see the asterisk there, they would follow the same consideration for grade bands for pre-K to grade 5. So that could mean that if a student's in our autism program at the high school level, parents would have, again, a choice to return their son or daughter to school in person based on when the pre-K to fifth grade students return. And then you'll notice that once we hit that low threshold, that we would have in person for pre-K to grade 5. Then we would also have grades 6 through 8 and then grades 9 through 12. So I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of the instructional types based on the health metrics. So the next area that we're hoping to get to is the moderate range for pre-K to fifth grade. That also includes special education. So I just wanted to make sure you are aware of how those decisions are being made as it relates to considerations for in-person. And again, this chart is fluid, so each week it may change and shift based on updated information as we know it. The next thing I wanted to make sure that you were aware of is our COVID-19 related building closures. There is an online database that our district is maintaining to be very transparent as it relates to COVID-19 related building closures or even areas of the building that are closed. So I'm just going to have Marcy just click on that link. Again, it's on our public website. One of the things I want you to note that as of January 11, we are following the Center for Disease Control's recommendations that it may not be necessary to close the entire building. So if there's a staff member or a visitor that might have, that reports that they tested positive for COVID, it may not result in the entire building being closed, but it may result in a portion of the building being closed. So if Marcy just scrolls a little bit, you'll begin to see how we shifted that. So for example, the last closure on the 25th was Chapel Forge, and you notice that only the gym was closed off on that particular day. If you scroll a little further, you'll see for Deerfield Run, for example, the main office and the cafeteria were closed. You'll notice on the 15th at Walden Woods, for example, the entire building was closed. So I did want to let you know that as January 11th, prior to that, if there was a COVID positive case, we would close the entire building, but it really depends on where that particular visitor or staff member or parent even might have been located in the building to determine if the whole building is closed or if it's just designated areas. So that is a change from what was initially advertised. I wanted to make sure you're aware of that. The other thing that I would share with you is that we definitely recognize that, many of our students with disabilities have been impacted. And we've also learned from colleagues both in Maryland as well as in other districts throughout the nation that as students are returning to school-based in-person instruction, that some students have been resilient and that not all of them have been impacted as it relates in terms of maintaining progress. Please know that we are working very closely with the Maryland State Department of Education to develop our recovery and compensatory services plans. We actually had Annie Willer, who's our liaison from MSDE, meet with our leadership team in January to begin engaging in case studies and scenario planning as we consider the recovery and compensatory services. I also want you to know that as a district, we're looking district-wide for all of our learners, not just students with disabilities or English learners with disabilities, but there are efforts to look at recovery for all students, similar to what we did last year. For example, at the high school level, if a student had failed a class, we offered credit recovery at no cost to the parent. At the middle school level, we offered Ingenuity, which was an online platform. And if it was a student with disability, we did offer special education teachers to support the specially designed instruction component of students' IEPs. So I do want you to know that as a district, we're looking at, recovery systemically for all students. And then in addition to those recovery programs and efforts, we will also be looking at those individual decisions that we will have to make as IEP team members and making sure that we have a training plan to really address, the recovery and the data that teams would have to look at. I'm actually attending a meeting tomorrow with the Maryland State Department of Education that addresses recovery planning, and we'll continue to engage in those conversations. We don't, again, have an update around recovery yet. We did add in the parent distance learning guide, a flow chart that's right from MSDE around kind of the flow chart of decisions in terms of if a student is impacted, these are some considerations that the IEP team would have to look at in terms of data. If the student is not impacted, then of course, we wouldn't offer recovery or compensatory services. But I just want everyone to know that we are definitely planning and working through that when students return to in-person learning after a period of time, we will begin to engage parents in those conversations on an individual basis as it relates to the recovery planning. So those are the updates that I wanted to share with you as it relates to our reopening. The last thing that I will share with you is that our recovery operational guide, which has not been publicly released. It did go to principals probably about a week ago for them to review and provide feedback or provide any questions and clarifications based on the guidance. And that's really the operational. So we have the reopening plan that really walks through, examples of schedules, the parent piece around the different parent centers and how we're supporting technology. It talked about the attendance policies, et cetera. But the operational reopening really brings things into play in terms of how far students should be apart when they enter a building. What does it look like for transportation? What is going to be our mask policy in terms of students wearing masks? And one of the things that we have talked about, and in our reopening plan, we clearly communicated that there are students, particularly with disabilities, that may not wear masks, particularly if you think about students with autism and their sensory integration needs. And so we'll be looking at that. More guidance will be forthcoming. But it would be our position in the Department of Special Education that if we have students, because of the characteristics of their disability and they're impacted and cannot wear a mask, that we would definitely want to document that as part of their IEP so that everyone is aware of those students that may exist that are coming, being picked up by our buses and coming into school, that student has a reasonable accommodation of not wearing a mask, as an example. So more to come from Dr. Golson will be forthcoming as, again, our health team looks at that particular considerations chart and begins to make those final decisions to enter us into the next phase. But I do want to say, I think you've been watching probably the COVID cases, that the data is reducing in terms of we're heading, I think, in the right direction as a state and even as a district in terms of our COVID rate. So hopefully it'll continue to trend downward. Vaccinations will begin to roll out. And so getting students back will be sooner, definitely, than later. Are there any questions or comments just about what I've shared in terms of the reopening status of where we are as a district?
Yeah, Trinell, I have a question.
Mhm.
Well, I actually got a couple, but the vaccine or the vaccination program, right? So I'm assuming that this is all going to get done before reopening so that administrators and staff have both doses already done before the doors open back up.
So the way that I would answer that is that the vaccine is not a condition on us reopening.
Okay.
It's just those three, the three factors that I went over earlier are the three key metrics that they're using, but vaccine is currently not one of them.
Okay. And then my next question before I let somebody else ask a question is when you talk about when the schools opens back up to students being on board and working with the parents to look at things like recovery services and stuff like that, how is that going to be handled? Is there going to be another plan that addresses that? Because you may have a flood of parents that are looking to engage the system with issues that their children have regressed and stuff like that. And so I'm assuming your plan is going to have a mechanism to deal with a wave of that coming, right?
Yes, we will absolutely communicate, because as you can imagine, when you have over 17,000 students with disabilities and about 15,800 of them with IEPs, that definitely there will be a process and every team won't be able to meet at the same time. So we will definitely release what our plan is. And we anticipate taking, many months to get through all of those decisions and conversations with parents, just because of the size of our district. So we will release information based on the guidance that MSDE has shared, and we'll base our plan based on their guidance, but be very transparent in what parents in our community can expect around those recovery conversations.
It looks like Sarah has her hand up.
Hi. So I wanted to ask, especially that last point you made that, it may take a few months to get through all those students, and it's a lot. One issue that it's personal, but it's a bigger issue, is the issue of transition. So students who are due to graduate this year have not been able to access things like site-based work experience and things like that. And I'm just curious what the county is, if you have any thoughts about where that is and what parents of kids who are in that position should do with regards to these meetings. Because if it's going to take a few months, we may be at the end of the year, when our students would graduate before we know.
So to your point, Sarah, that's an excellent point, is that we will probably look at prioritizing student cases. So for example, students who are graduating definitely would be a prioritized set of students that we would want to definitely meet on. It would probably be similar to how we rolled out the initial and reevaluation assessment priority cases. We did actually prioritize, for example, students who we had already gotten permission to test before schools closed. We prioritized graduating seniors, students who we know were exiting this year. So definitely when that recovery plan is released, it definitely will prioritize students and give that particular guidance to school teams that these are the students that you would definitely want to make sure you're holding impact meetings first. So we will give that guidance to our school teams, and definitely any student that is graduating this year would definitely be a priority. For scenario planning, we actually looked at a scenario just with our leadership team and with MSDE of a student who would be exiting. And so that's something that I know we'll be working very closely with the transition team at the Maryland State Department of Education in terms of scenario planning and different scenarios that we think may play out, particularly for those districts who were not able to resume, in-person instruction before the end of the year. So definitely more to come, but I definitely imagine we would do some prioritization by student group related to that. So thanks for bringing that up.
Chanel, real quick, just to piggyback off that, does that include, would that also include looking at community service hours? Because, we can't really do community service hours too well because the community's pretty much on lockdown. So would that include that as well?
So the the Maryland State Department of Education would make that determination like they did last year if there's a waiver. So we're just waiting to get that information because that's a state requirement in terms of the community service hours. And I do anticipate that there will be additional guidance that will be forthcoming related to that. Similar to how they released updated information last year about certain graduation requirements.
Okay. Any of our parents got any more questions before we move on to the next presentation? Any of our parents on the line? Okay.
And again, the last thing that I would say to our parents, and thank you, Sarah, for putting all the direct links in the chat, and we always, of course, share the PowerPoint, is to really definitely pay attention to our website, and particularly that considerations for in-person instruction, because again, that chart will shift each week. And then the last thing that I would share with you is I know Dr. Gozen is committed to surveying our parents and releasing that survey where parents will complete if they wanted to continue with virtual distance learning or in person once we get to that point. So there will be a survey that will be forthcoming for parents. I just wanted to make sure I provided you with that update as well.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Ms. Bowman, for that
you.
update. And next, we're going to have transition into our second presentation. Ms. Laura, because I don't want to mess your last name up, she's going to be going over student technology tips, blast off for success that will help our students with technology, as well as their parents, hopefully, be able to use this technology a lot better being in this virtual environment, as we don't know how long we're going to be in this virtual environment. And we saw the numbers from the chart that Trinell just showed us. Looks like we may be in a virtual environment for a little bit longer. So without further ado, Ms. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight as kind of representing the T3/Special Education Department Technology Training Group. So if you can just kind of fast forward a little bit through the next couple of slides, please. Thank you. First, I was introduced. My name is Laura Sibold. I am an instructional specialist for the autism programs. I primarily work with secondary autism in middle and high school. So that is my role here in the county. And I've had the opportunity to work with the T3, our technology training team, as well as several special educators within the county to develop some programs for our students surrounding training for use of technology. So I'm going to give you guys a little brief background on that process and what that looks like and some next steps going forward. So the reality with technology and distance learning, especially with students with disabilities, is it offers these amazing resources. So all of a sudden I have a new vocabulary of words like Nearpod and Pear Deck and Jamboard and terms that I've never used before and now am using all the time. Kahoot, I think, was a little more popular before, but now, I mean, it's huge, it's everywhere. So all of these technological tools allows for use of visuals. And of course, as an autism specialist, I am fully in support of that. It also allows for multiple types of differentiation of instruction. It's incredible. However, go to the next slide, please. What we started finding is that despite all these wonderful engagement tools and resources for our students, that our students were having trouble with this access piece. And I don't necessarily just mean like having a strong internet connection or something like that, but being able to consistently access and manipulate the basic features of things like Zoom and or Google Classroom in order to get into class and therefore access content effectively. So we have our little friend on the slide here who's going, ah, and I'm sure you experience this with your students as well. Teachers are creating this wonderful content, but if the student is not able to kind of use and manipulate the basic features within Zoom, then it becomes this unanticipated barrier. So we wanted to take some steps to address that. If you could go to the next slide, please. So we wanted to have this partnership between the technology training team as well as the Department of Special Education. So I was thrilled to be asked to be a part of this to enable this conversation of what are we seeing, what are some of the issues that are going on, and how do we address them. So we gathered information from across the county. So we used people that were, or special educators in various buildings. I did some polling with my colleagues in terms of, hey, what are you seeing? What is the feedback from your programs, from your schools? What are they having issues with? Once we had all of that information pulled together, it broke down into 3 main topic areas and also reinforced the need for the dissemination of the parent resource website. And Marcy, if you wouldn't mind clicking on that, thank you. So hopefully you guys have seen the Distance Learning for Parents resources, because they have put together incredible materials surrounding the utilization of Google Classroom, of Zoom. If you can scroll down a little bit. Okay, so things like Google Classroom, Clever, Zoom, Google Meet. How do we support password protection, password access? All of this is designed for families, for parents. You have student tech tips at the top there. We have Spanish language resources as well. There is just a plethora of information that we found that from my feedback from colleagues, they weren't really aware of this website. So this for sure is now being pushed out from our colleagues out to different school teams, to programs, everywhere, so that families can actually access this, because it has fabulous information. If you can go back into the presentation, thank you. I so appreciate you, Marcy, and how skilled you are at doing this. Thank you. So I mentioned that we break down into 3 topics. So our main topics: Zoom tips for success, splitting up your screen, because that was becoming a consistent issue with students not being able to look at one side and the other when they were maybe using a graphic organizer or implementing some strategies used by the teacher. They couldn't pull up the content on one side and the resource on the other. Topic 3, clearing your cache, which is something that when students are having tech issues or when there are things coming up, clearing your cache is a quick and easy way of kind of resetting. And our students weren't really sure how to do that. So it became an issue. So under each of these topics, we created a presentation. So we have one presentation with these 3 topics. Each topic area has the opportunity for question and answer. Topics have video models as well as visual explanations. And we have opportunities for students to try out the skills within the training session. So that's kind of the structure overall of the presentations. If you could go to the next slide. Okay, so our next session is tomorrow, January 27th, and we have 2 times. One is at 8 and one is at 12, and each session is 30 minutes long. So I have the information for you there for our technology training sessions. Again, we'll go over those three topics that I highlighted on the previous slide. If we could go to the next one. All right, so how do we get our student ready? So say we really are excited, you want your child to attend the session, we want to get them ready. So 1, we want to remind them that there's a session going on tomorrow. If they have a visual schedule, make sure you're adding it to their schedule. Have you write it down, have the student write it down. Select which time you want to attend. Discuss questions that they may have before the session and make sure you write those questions down. If your student is nervous to ask a question during the session, they can use the chat feature to type it in, or you can email me directly. I'll be training during the 8 a.m. session, and I'll make sure for the 12 p.m. session that I'll get it to one of the trainers for the 12 p.m. session. So no concerns. So you guys can email it to me directly and I'll make sure it gets into the right hands. Okay, so if you go to the next slide. So I have the Zoom links embedded in the presentation as well for our 8 a.m. session and our 12 p.m. session. So you guys can hop on, or your students can hop on because it's supposed to be for student tech tips. And I am looking forward to seeing our students there. And I put in the parent resource website again, just to highlight that it is an excellent, excellent resource for families to utilize. So thank you all. I know I kind of went through it quickly, but do you have any questions for me or comments or concerns?
I have a question, which is just, I would love to get the word on this out to our listserv tonight, since it's tomorrow. And so I grabbed a screenshot. I think I'll just grab a screenshot of this if you don't mind for a second, unless you can get the slides to me really, really fast. So let me just grab that. Okay.
I'll send you the slides tonight, Sarah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
There's
And
also, I think, a PDF file of the image that I showed before that has the Zoom information, the meeting information on it. And Marcy, if you don't have that, I'll email it to you right now.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
Ms. Laura, are these monthly training sessions, or how often do these occur?
So currently, this is the last one that is set up. However, I think that is likely open to discussion if we hear feedback that people are really interested in, and I'll defer that to Trinell. She may have a more complete answer than I would.
Yeah, so I do know that the recording, because we did one in December, the recording, I believe, is going to be posted. And one of the things that we will be looking at is the participation. And we are open to definitely continuing them in February if we get a good turnout. And, you know, our principals and educators are saying, can we repeat it to do the live? Because I think the live version definitely helps. So that's something we're definitely open to doing, to continue those, the live lessons, but then the recorded ones will also be on the website. But we're looking to offer them, we would offer them probably once a month. So we'll see how our turnout goes in January. In December, we had very low turnout. We think it was because of the holidays, but we'll see how the turnout goes tomorrow. And if we have good turnout, we definitely would offer that again to our students.
It was also the one day that we got any level of snow. So
yeah, that's great.
That also may have impacted our students' desire to come to a technology training. But I think it has incredibly valuable information, even if it is just your basic Zoom, because we found that enabled students to really access all of that wonderful differentiation that's going on within the content areas by feeling more confident on their ability to manipulate the classroom and work with Zoom. It eases that anxiety where they're then able to access that learning environment. So if you guys have heard me speak before about being in the green zone, you know, having knowledge of Zoom enables our students to be in the green zone. So.
All right, so we got two other questions. We got Ms. Martin and Ms. Newman. I don't know who came first, but whoever wants to jump in, Ms. Newman or Ms. Martin.
Good evening, everyone. Laura, I have a question about technology training.
Mm-hmm.
What has been done to support special education teachers and IEP teams regarding being able to be creative and have knowledge about tech tools that can help support children during distance learning? I find that there are a lot of scenarios in IEP meetings where, you know, everyone are just sort of scratching our heads. What can we do? We're stifled because of the computer, you know, teacher student situation. But, you know, there are just things like going into chat rooms, and there have to be other ways to provide support. And so I'm just wondering, has staff been trained in
It's
this
an
area?
It's an excellent question, and I can defer to Trinell if you'd like to take it. I
Sure.
have my own thoughts, but I, I
And
want to
then you could
defer.
give your thoughts. So I will tell you that when school closed last June, we definitely had a week of different trainings. They offered probably 40 different trainings to our teachers and service providers. And then when we came back in August for the beginning of the school year, there was also required training. So the training definitely is ongoing. Our T3 team definitely is training on different mediums and platforms and different tools. All of the training, some of it is asynchronous where you can actually follow along as an educator. Some of it is actually synchronous, which means it's live, but there's ongoing training that our T3 team is constantly providing to our teachers throughout the year. But the big push was definitely in June. And then of course we had new teachers come and then those teachers return. And then there was another big push in June. We also in December, for example, we did over probably 60 different training topics, the curriculum and instruction office and the special ed that included student engagement. Because one of the big factors that even I personally have witnessed in going into virtual classrooms and doing informal observations is that the student engagement piece was definitely very concerning, both for our executive leadership, our principals, teacher leaders, central office team members, and even, our principals and assistant principals. So there was a big push to really spend our professional learning day in December around student engagement. And again, we offered just all kind of helpful hints and tools and considerations. We did in the Department of Special Education do a specific student engagement presentation as we think about students with disabilities. And again, all of those trainings are, on the website around thinking about different options and learner characteristics of students with disabilities, to really improve that student engagement piece. We've even had each school has a T3 team member. So someone from the training team is actually assigned to a set of schools throughout our district. So every single school has a T3 member and they offer specific school-based training. So maybe the teachers at a particular school are struggling with a piece of the technology or having difficulty getting students to use an online graphic organizer as an example. The T3 member is able to provide specific school-based training based on the needs. They also come in and help troubleshoot because they are part of that instructional technology department. So definitely they're always willing and able to support. I've even had some members of the T3 team actually contact parents directly, and we've had conference calls to help troubleshoot, things that were happening with the parent at home to support their son or daughter with accessing the technology. So they definitely support parents, they support educators, leaders out there. And then I know, Laura, you wanted to add a few comments as well.
Yeah, I think, the training aspect is definitely a piece of it, and making sure that educators are trained in the different engagement platforms, as well as that they have access to those asynchronous opportunities. So just like I showed the parent website, we have a website that we access as educators to look at a variety of different resources that we can gain new knowledge on. One of the things I will say about technology in my experience with engaging with students is that we also have to find the right platforms for the students as well. So sometimes it wasn't about like knowing how to use the platform, but recognizing that certain students were having difficulties with X platform and then trying a different engagement platform. And so that took some time to kind of match the needs of the students in a particular group with the engagement platform that they were using, even within a particular content area. So it became like this learning experience of like, okay, how I know how to use this platform, but my students aren't really connecting with it. And now let me shift this because I see that their needs are actually where our barrier is here. And this platform addresses that in a more successful way in terms of even how you're presenting information. So it's even a bigger concept than just being trained and knowing how to use it, and then figuring out, well, this is the best way to utilize it with the students that I'm working with. And you know, I work, you know, my specialization is autism. So trying to figure out those high levels of visual stimulation that certain platforms have, and then and working within that, it's just it's beyond just knowing the platforms, but really knowing the students as well. So I think the county has done a fantastic job at really providing all sorts of resources and training opportunities, and then really narrowing in on how we get that engagement piece as well. And I appreciate your question, Ms. Martin.
All right, one more quick question from Ms. Newman, and we're gonna keep on moving with our agenda. Ms. Newman?
Okay. I got a couple questions. They're rapid fire questions though. How long is the training?
30 minutes.
If I wanted to enroll my kid, is there an interpreter or closed caption?
That, I'm not sure about interpreter, but I think we do have closed captions set up.
Yeah, I would say
Let me
definitely,
reach-
since it's during the school day, we would definitely have an interpreter available. Because they're
Okay.
working during the day, because they're both sessions are during the day. And then closed captioning, we
But
can't
it-
cut that on through the Zoom platform.
8 o'clock is before the school day. His school starts at 9:30.
Right, so, or 12 o'clock, yeah, because we did it at 8, because some schools are early, and then the 12 o'clock are to catch our the schools that start later.
So I would notify Robin or somebody if I wanted somebody.
Sure.
Okay. The other thing is this, did the school system ever buy Cami, the software for PDFs?
I would have to follow up with the instructional technology team. I'm not sure if they did or not. I know some departments are using Cami. That's KAMI, correct?
Right.
I do know, I believe our textbook office definitely uses it, but I'm not sure if it was purchased systemically for educators. Laura, would you know? Or Marcy, anybody else knows?
I'm not sure. I know that most of my programs are using Cami.
That's what I was gonna say. I don't know officially if it's been purchased, but I think every classroom I've popped into has had it.
So we must have done, so Ms. Newman, we must have done a systemic purchase then, but I can definitely verify that. But it sounds like Marcy and Laura are both saying that the classrooms they've been in and worked with, they've seen it. So that
Yeah.
probably implies a systemic purchase.
Yeah,
They did-
because the kids used to could use DocHub. I still have it on my personal machine, but
Okay.
it's not available if he was to use the Google Chromebook. The other question is some additional trainings that would be helpful is the new dashboard that you all have. What is it, HARPA something? That might be a nice training to show the kids how to use that. That just came out, what, 2 weeks ago?
Mhm.
The HAPARA
Apara.
dashboard, yes. As a, for an executive functioning person to know how to utilize their emails is consolidated with their Google Classrooms, and announcements, the homework, everything is in one dashboard. That would be a nice training.
And Ms. Newman, thank you for that. I just wanted to verify, we do have Cami purchase. I just went to our technology training site for employees, and yes, teachers and students can highlight, underline, strike through text and PDF and other documents. So yes, it is district-wide.
So is it an app or is it an extension of Google?
It's saying that it's an online document.
Okay.
It's an extension.
It's an extension. Okay.
And then
Yeah, so we
lastly, another training for the kids is explaining to them the difference between what they can do on a Google Chromebook versus a Windows-based software, because Zoom is different. And the things you can do on Zoom with a Chromebook, you can do more with a Windows-based computer. And sometimes people are trying to show kids stuff that they can do, not realizing there's restrictions with the Chromebook and the ISO. So there's some distinctions between Windows and the Chrome ISO. I don't know if that gets too deep into the woods, but sometimes the kids can't do it and they're wondering why, and it's because they're using a Google Chromebook. That's it.
Almost like a crosswalk, kind of a crosswalk
Yes.
document. And we'll have to check to see if T3, they've developed so many resources to see if there is a crosswalk document, but that's a great idea. Ms. Newman,
Yeah.
we can always count on you because I know you have a strong IT background, but that's something we that we can send. We'll first check to see if that resource exists, but to see if there's any kind of crosswalk resources that they've developed. And if not, as you know, Ms. Newman, when they hear our suggestions, they definitely go into full gear of development. So if we don't have it, we definitely will share that recommendation. And I'm sure our T3 team would develop something because I think that could be helpful and useful for parents and for students.
Understanding the different operating systems.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
because you can't have virtual backgrounds when you use a Chromebook, but on the regular, you can.
Yep, that's a
Okay.
good point.
All right. Well, thank you for your question, Ms. Newman. And moving right along, we're going to go into our supports and resources for families. Go ahead.
I think Ms. Taylor had her hand up. I think she has a question. No?
I'm okay. Move along.
Oh, I did.
Okay.
All right, Reverend Taylor, you can hold on to that because after this next presentation, we'll have open for questions and comments after this, so you can bring it up then. I apologize for not seeing your hand. So we have supports and resources for families for January through June 2021. I think Marcy and Miss Yvette Young are going to be giving that presentation, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. So we just want to give a couple of updates on some exciting things that are coming up in the future. We want you to save the date. We have caregiver support groups that are already ongoing. We just finished our January meetings. One is mental wellness for distance learning, and that's kind of Yvette's baby. She's been leading this from our office. And some of those topics include mental wellness, stress reduction. We're going to have a gentle yoga a gentle yoga meeting. Sorry about that. We actually met with that team today. And then our second one is supporting parents of students with challenging behaviors, which is run by two board certified behavior analysts. And that talks about the functions of behavior, which we know is different at home from in school. And so there are some times when we'll cover, those functions of behavior at home as well. And then the principles of applied behavioral analysis, where we are helping those families develop behavioral support plans. So I will include, when I send Sarah the information, the registration links for those. They are usually on Thursday evenings, and they're an hour and a half. And they've been very successful. And we want you to really save the date for this. This is exciting. We have our 10th annual Parent Empowerment Conference, and we have just secured our 2 keynote speakers. So Dr. Ross Green is our first keynote speaker. You may have heard of him. He's spoken with us before. He is an author and creative of the Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, which is non-punitive, non-adversarial, and trauma-informed care. And he will be speaking with us on March 20th, which is a Saturday morning, which is the kickoff of our conference. And then we also are welcoming Dr. Dan Habib, who is a creator of award-winning films. You may have seen some of them. Who Cares About Kelsey, including Samuel. And so he'll be joining us. And then stay tuned, because we are still in the planning stages of over 20 virtual sessions. And much like last year, they're going to go across March and April. So we're really excited about that. We did want to give you some information and just show you where to find some resources as far as COVID-19 interventions and things like that. And these resources are out there, but sometimes they're kind of buried. So we wanted to give you these links. So the first one I have is the MSDE, oops, sorry about that. Let's try that again. MSDE Division of Early Intervention and Special Education Services. They issue some technical assistance bulletins. So if you go to that website and you scroll down till you hit 20, And the first one, which is 2001, starts all of their COVID-19 bulletins. So talking about serving children with disabilities under COVID-19, continuity of learning. They have a bunch of supplements for specific disability groups, deaf, hard of hearing, specially designed instruction through alternative service delivery. They have secondary transition technical assistance bulletins, early childhood covered under the IFSP, tips for mask wearing. I know Trinell talked about that earlier in kind of our operational planning guide. Tips for collaborating with the special education team. So there are tons and tons, and you'll see a lot of them are new just as of this year. So please take a minute, go through them, look for, they are in parent-friendly language. And so we just want to make sure that you knew where they were located. And though all of those links will be in the PowerPoint. So the second MSDE resource is Maryland Learning Links, and there are two pieces to this one. The first is they have a general repository for all of your COVID resources. So it talks about the statewide continuity plans that we did in the spring, health and safety of the teachers, service providers, and teachers, a little more about serving students with disabilities. There are some of the more general technical assistance tabs. They're a little better organized on this site. You saw them kind of organized by date of release on the site that I just showed you. This one is actually organized by topic. So looking for recovery planning and tips for curriculum instruction and assessment. What I really like about this one is it also links to the parent guides, and those aren't necessarily linked on the other MSDE site. And so one that is hot off the presses just for today is this new IEP process guide. And it has facts for virtual IEPs, before the virtual IEP meeting, during the virtual IEP meeting, and after the virtual IEP meeting. This was not necessarily created at MSDE, but our family support division at MSDE had input into creating this and publishing this. So like I said, this is hot off the presses. It was just shared with us today, and I wanted to make sure you guys had a link for it. Couple more before I turn it over to Yvette. Understood.org is a resource we use with a lot of our families. It does have a family portal with general disability information, activities for kids, talking about different types of disabilities. But what I really wanted to point out was they also have a COVID-19 series. So how do you talk to about the coronavirus with your kids? School closings and distance learning, kind of how families are coping, new community groups and things like that. So as I scrolled through, you'll see all of those links that were hyperlinked at the top. And for this next one, I'm going to turn the last two over to Yvette.
Yes, so actually these are two featured community-based resources that I wanted to highlight this time. And they're not new because information was sent by SECAC about them, but I had the opportunity to participate in Children's National Medical Center. They're running a series in partnership with the George Washington University Rodman Institute and the Black Coalition of COVID-19. They have a series on COVID-19 and beyond with very engaging topics like sick and tired of the COVID-19 and its impact on mental health and living in the pandemic. And these are short, I think they're only about an hour-long webinars, but they're very, very engaging and very valuable information, and free, of course. The other featured collaboration, community-based collaboration is Parents Place of Maryland. I participate in their parent place meetings for professionals. They are an advocacy, support, and training organization. What I really want to highlight, if Marcy scrolls down, you see they provide resources, programs, and services, but you'll see on the calendar side, the coffee and conversations, those are, they separated it out, and it's for parents with a parent focus, and it's also separated by age of youth. So I highly encourage you to participate. I believe they offer these coffee and conversations weekly, but you can definitely check their website for information.
Finally, we just want to remind you of our contact information. Even though we're not in the office, we all have Google Voice numbers, and we all have our email up all day. So we have, of course, Dr. Jayate, Beth,